easier it is to sell souls.
There is a new price on freedom, so buy into it while supplies last. Changes need to be made. No more curbside baggage. 7 p.m. curfew. Racial profiling will continue with less bitching. We've unified over who to kill, so until I find more relevant scripture to quote, remember, our God is bigger, stronger, smarter, and much wealthier. So wave those flags with pride, especially the white part.
We're selling addictive 24-hour candlelight vigils in TVs. Freedom will be defended at the cost of civil liberties. The viewers are glued to television screens, stuck cause lots of things seem too sick. I use opportunities to pluck heartstrings for theme music. I show you which culture to pump you.
All right, welcome to the Grift. I am Reverend
Gonzo.
We have a quasi-special edition of the show today as we had technical difficulties in our usual recording spot, so we are recording in a very public place.
You may or may not be able to hear that in the background. We don't know. There may be interruptions. We don't know. We don't know a lot.
Yeah, we don't.
This is not something we've done
But behind me is the very expensive mural that I had painted on the walls of my business.
You can almost see part of it.
Yeah, you can almost see part of it.
I wasn't dragging around the green screen across town today. That's for goddamn sure.
It's a speakeasy jazz singer in the background. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that's what we got going on back there.
So. We weren't here last week because of the same technical difficulties that we're recording here this week, which is the AC in my apartment is fucked, and it is so hot in there right now that the thermometer on my thermostat is actually maxed out. It doesn't go. I don't know how hot it is in my apartment right now.
Oh God!
Like
that's
because it maxes out at like just above 90.
Oh. Ow.
So it's at least 91.
At least 91.
It's at least 91.
Could be much more.
I put in another work order today.
Good. Okay.
After I have talked to them at the front office 4 times now.
Oh Jesus
Since
Christ!
this first became an issue last Tuesday.
That's really unfortunate.
I put in another work order today, and we're gonna see if I have to kill a motherfucker. But anyway.
I could just kill him, man. All right.
This is more freeform than normal this week, I think, because we missed a week. And
even though we're pretty freeform most of the time, we've been planning to add more structure. We're just bad at it.
Originally, I remember before it's been so long since we recorded. This is pre-Elon Trump crash out.
It was happening.
It was happening as we were recording, and they were like, "Oh shit, I can't wait to have fun with this next week."
We talked about it a bit because it was starting. It was starting,
but it hadn't really. We didn't know the full extent of it.
Yeah,
because I remember we stopped recording and then we came back to the bar because I had to drop you off.
Right.
And that's when we started seeing all the memes and all of the tweets and
Tesla stock had already started to tank because of the fighting.
Yeah, that was a good time.
That was great times.
And then let's see what's happened since then. Well,
so much. Israel decided that's the big story.
Israel decided to attempt to force us into starting World War III.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to escalate that far,
and I don't think.
But so here's the problem with it is that they now have a window. They have basically Gaza kept them preoccupied for a while, and so they stopped intervening in Syria. Okay,
right.
They didn't like Assad, but
no one liked Assad except for I don't know. A couple of shitty people.
They liked Assad being stable, right? So Israel was actively helping prop up Assad, but then October 7th happened, and they got busy.
Yeah,
and that took their focus away from that. As we can see, Syria toppled, Assad fled to Russia.
Oh yeah, that is right. That did happen. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. It's a stable,
and now Syria's in the middle of a full-fledged civil war, but here's the thing about that, is that has prevented Iran from getting as much through Syria, right?
Right.
To help Lebanon and Hezbollah and Hamas, right? Mm-hmm. So now there's a supply chain problem going from Iran to Israel into Hamas. Okay, so there's a big supply chain problem there. Now Russia used to offer all these security guarantees in the region, including to Iran.
They're a little preoccupied.
They're preoccupied with Ukraine, right? So Israel now has one and only one window to cripple and possibly force regime change and lasting decades-long damage to the Iranian regime. One and only one window, and this is it.
And Bibi is always going to take his shot. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Has regime change ever worked out well?
No,
It's
it
not
hasn't.
something that anytime a government topples and is replaced,
Right.
it has to be because of internal forces. Like, if you as an outsider wants to, like, quietly fund, like, anti-government groups to overthrow their own government, like, you want to offer them, like, backdoor support
That can work.
quietly, that can work.
As long as it's still an internal resistance that has the will of
It has
the
to be
people
like, it
behind
has to be a homegrown resistance. It can't be you trying to foment one. But if you find that there's a resistance movement that's already there, that's got a fair amount of popular support, but just doesn't have the material means to do what it wants to do.
Yeah, as
you
long
can,
as
you can quietly siphon them aid to meet their goals.
And you don't need all the people, but you need a significant
And, you know,
enough segment of the population,
And then- but then-
particularly the working class and the poor, because like,
And then if that works, you have to be willing to build a good relationship with the new regime, even if they're not exactly who you want. Like, you don't embargo them for 60 years afterwards.
right.
You don't help them overthrow the government.
We forget
So
that
that you-
Iran is in this mess largely, in large part, because we fucked it up the first time with the
Right.
regime change.
And like, it wasn't even like specifically like us having a hard on for doing it. It was the goddamn Brits.
Yeah,
Like, hey, can you help us, CIA?
right. And now-
Overthrow the democratically elected president of this fairly secular nation in the region.
yeah, but you see, they were too left wing for us, and
Oh, he wanted to nationalize the oil fields.
yeah, that's
What happened? What happened 25 years later when the guy we put in charge was overthrown?
There was a extremely long hostage situation as the uprising stormed and took the U.S. embassy.
You know what? You know why you, as an American, if you're watching this, should be upset about all of this, whether you realize it or not. You know what would have not happened probably had we not overthrown Mossadegh in '53, and then the Shah not been overthrown in '79 in an Islamist revolution. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah,
Ronald Reagan, he might still win.
but probably not.
But probably not.
The economy was bad.
The economy was bad.
But Carter inherited a shitty economy.
Right, and like...
And like he was taking the blame for a lot of it, but there was not much that could be done.
And if again, backdoor deals hadn't been made to hold on to those hostages just a little longer, they
Right.
would have been released when Carter...
Plus, the length of the entire thing made it look bad. It
But
made Carter look bad. It made him look weak. Made
So,
him
like,
look ineffective.
Every time I see somebody talk about, like, we should overthrow this government, even a shitty government, like, you can hate Benjamin Netanyahu
Right.
and the Israeli government. Mm-hmm. Overthrowing them probably wouldn't end well.
Yeah, I mean, not from an outside force. I mean,
No.
obviously,
Like, if
I think that their
internal
government
forces-
needs to topple. But
Yes, absolutely. They need a lot of internal reforms, but they have like a loud minority of Israelis in Israel who fucking hate the government.
Yeah, you know what is wild?
It's small,
it's-
but it could grow.
This is one of those funny things that I catch. You know, the like hyper pro-Zionist Jewish people that I run into
Yeah.
online, particularly, are almost all like American,
Oh,
right?
I've
Yeah.
never. I personally haven't ran into one that wasn't American. I'm sure they're
Right.
out there.
But they will bring up that like 90% of world Jewry are Zionists, right?
Right.
Quote unquote. They're right. The weird thing is there are a lot more Israelis. There are about as many Israelis, right, that
Right.
want their government to collapse and turn into a secular democracy. There are more of them that want their own government to collapse and
there's
turn into a
also-
secular
there's also
democracy
multiple-
than there are in America.
They also
It's
don't
fucking
like to
wild.
acknowledge that there are multiple definitions of Zionism from people who call themselves Zionists.
Right.
Like, you've got people who just simply believe they're Zionists because they believe Israel has the right to exist.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the hyper-expansionist types that we've got in charge now, where it's like, no, we must take all this land, we must push everyone out. If that means we have to commit a genocide to do it, so be it.
Right. But inside Israel, the politics internally, there are more Israeli Jews that would love for their government to basically collapse and reform as a multi-religious, open democracy
and it's funny because
than there are in the U.S.
It
It's
tends
wild.
to be both the most secular and the most religious.
Yes.
Like the far ends of the religious spectrum in the country tend to be united on that one issue. For different reasons,
Yeah.
but like they're united on that issue. Like
But they're both good reasons if you think about
you've got a lot of like the ultra religious Orthodox types who are like, this shouldn't exist because we haven't earned it yet.
Right.
Like God doesn't want us to have this now. We're
And it's going to be
too corrupt.
Right, and it comes from the outside. It doesn't
Yeah.
come from the outside in. It's a thing that would have, like, it's the theology behind it is really complicated. I really shouldn't speak to it too much, but as far as I can tell, it's one of those like there will be a time and a place kind of thing, and they don't want it to be forced through external powers.
They
right?
certainly don't want it to be because of the fucking British.
Right. Yeah. And then
I think the world needs to just take a moment to thank both the United Kingdom
Yeah.
and the United States of America for causing.
Oh, and the French.
And the French for causing.
Let's not forget the French.
Literally every single problem that exists in the entire region today.
Yeah. All of them.
Every fucking line.
Like I still hear
drawn.
about Sykes-Picot all the
Yeah.
time.
It's
Like-
just Western
Yeah.
Europe and the United States done fucked up that whole region real good.
Yeah. Speaking of, actually, I went and I decided to read Seven Pillars of Wisdom, T.E. Lawrence.
Okay.
Fucking great read. Man, like the politics at the time were also kind of shady, but like there's this one guy trying real hard to do the right thing for the Arabs, right? And boy, is it sad that the Western powers afterwards were like, oh yeah, we know we told you we were doing this stuff for the right reason, but
The most British guy ever got Britished by the British.
right. And now, while he may have been the most British guy ever, he like in his heart, he was one of those guys who like went native, right? Like he loved the place, the people. Like fuck, he started the Arab Revolt because he had a platonic love affair with an Arab man.
We'll call it platonic.
He died a virgin. I swear to God, like he had no reason to hide it or lie because he was friends with like openly gay individuals. He was like one of the most like, except like you read through his.
I wonder if he was ace. Just
Yeah, everything indicates that he was asexual because he had really close friends that he knew were homosexual that he talked to about his like love life and that he really didn't have one, and he like up until like weeks before he died was like talking about how he had never known the flesh of another person.
There's honestly not a lot of time for love when you're overthrowing regimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, after that, he was like, you know, teaching and like writing, right? So, but when he was back in England, wealthy as fuck and famous, he could have had all the ass, men or women, that he wanted. Just didn't. Like, probably ace. And there was like one person that he had like ever really loved, and it was a young Arab boy, like when he was working on the border of Syria and Turkey. Like, it's amazing. Sorry. Weird little aside. Because I love the poem that it opens up with, this fucking love poem. Like, you know, it's a great book. Anyway. Yeah, that region fucked up by the Brits.
And us.
And us. And the French.
But, like, more the Brits than anybody else.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
let's be honest. Let's give credit where credit's due.
It wouldn't be held together
you know,
today without us.
If there's one thing that I really get annoyed with when it comes to the loud America bad brain rock crew is they let the British off of the hook too much. Mm-hmm. They don't give the British enough shit. The United Kingdom has caused untold misery around the world.
Yeah.
And they should be called out for it at every possible opportunity. And I think it is unfair to just blame us for shit they did. We did enough shit on our own without taking credit for their shit, too.
That's entirely fair. I think where that really... Why that happens, aside from America bad brain rot, because most of these kids are American,
Right.
is that after the war and in the post-war order,
Their empire collapsed entirely.
their empire collapses entirely.
By 48, yeah.
Yeah, and the U.S. takes the job, right? We keep holding up the order that was left behind from those empires, from the French and the Brits, right?
We had to keep the Soviets in check. That was the most important thing in the world.
And the way we did it mostly was by like keeping, most of those former colonies like as on the hook as possible, right? So we kept that order up.
It's interesting that there was like 50 years where it was basically just a race to see who was going to bankrupt who first.
Yeah.
In terms of global influence, and we won.
We did, but I mean, it's
at what cost?
Capitalism by design.
At what cost?
Was going to be more adaptable in that situation.
I'll be honest. I think that having the Soviet Union as a looming threat, real or otherwise, like a perceived looming threat, did a lot to prevent the really more rapacious capitalist impulses that existed in this country from really coming to fruition, because they couldn't go too hard too fast because they couldn't risk a revolution.
Absolutely, and more so in Europe. When you look at European politics, right, especially in the post-war era.
I mean, especially as they started gobbling up Eastern Bloc states.
Yeah, but that's when you see like socialist and even communist parties getting like spots in parliaments. So you get like center-left parties across Europe becoming dominant,
and like,
right?
Not U.S. politics center-left.
Right, actual center-left. And DemSoc and SocDem parties.
And it's also why you saw the conservative parties having policy positions that would be left-wing in the United States.
Exactly.
It wasn't until Thatcher came along that they really started trying to chip away at the NHS in the UK.
Right.
And that's because she was pure unrepentant evil.
And when you look at the Nordic bloc, they have a whole lot of very left-wing policies. You know what else they have? A lot of proximity to Russia.
Yeah.
Right? So
and they sort of replaced they sort of used the left-wing social policies internally to honestly be unusually weird and nationalist otherwise.
Yes.
It's easy to forget that how homogenous the populations of so many European nations are.
Yeah,
because they're weird and insular in that way.
There's some other factors to it too. To be honest, migrants don't, until the Syria collapse, right?
Yeah.
Until that wave, migrants didn't want to go that far north in Europe because you had to cross a bunch of borders. So until the EU was as stable as it was,
15, 20 borders you had to cross twice.
So you had to
Going
deal
in and
with
coming out.
You had to deal with governments along the way every step. It gets cold. It gets less densely populated, right? So you got all those hiccups. Coming to the U.S. was easier in some ways, especially because we used to be good about it, right? We used to just let refugees come here.
We were both children in the 80s.
Yep.
And I cannot...
The entirety of them.
The entirety, I was born in 79. I remember 1982 on.
I remember about 83, 84 on...
But
give or take some
something
things.
That I remember from my earliest days of being able to form long-term memories was the melting pot.
Yeah.
That was hammered into our fucking heads as kids.
Over and over again.
It was it was routinely taught to me as the single most important thing about this country.
The greatest thing about us, our social fabric, our moral fabric, our financial fabric.
It was what made us better than everywhere else in the world, was that we would accept anyone from anywhere, and their culture would become part of our culture,
and that would create the stew that is America.
And this was when Reagan was president.
Yeah. Reagan, and then his former opponent turned vice president, George H.W. Now, we, of course, the entire history of our immigration policies from the get-go have always been kind of racist. The first one, the first.
I mean, let's be honest.
First immigration law we ever had in the 1780s.
They kind of had,
or 1790s.
They kind of had to invent the idea of white people for this country to happen.
Yeah. So the 1790s, our first immigration law came in, and it was basically that freed white people were the only people who could come here and get citizenship, right?
Right.
So right off the bat, like, we started off with basically a policy that, like, no African could come here unless they were a slave.
And at that time, white did not just mean European.
It's true.
It was very specific because my Irish, Italian, and Polish ancestors.
Well, see, now that one, weirdly, so it gets funny because they had a level of kind of like quote-unquote whiteness until the 1800s, right? So then...
Well, they started coming over in larger numbers.
Right, and then they basically like lose that like almost honorary whiteness that they had temporarily until the Civil War, and then it's like, oh wait, they need whiteness again.
Yeah.
And then they lose it again, like...
Yeah, that's why my I don't know what ancestor it is. One of my great something or other grandfathers was in the one of the Pennsylvania cavalry regiments during the Civil War.
Okay.
The Irish Dragoons.
Dragoons.
Yeah.
The word dragoon is fascinating because if you're a dragoon, that meant that they were snatched up and basically forced to be part of it. But
the Irish Dragoons.
But there was a benefit at the end. You get paid and you get released paid in citizenship, but you're imprisoned first to be a soldier.
He got shot between both legs, like right through both calves.
Okay.
Was taken prisoner by the Confederates.
Uh-huh.
Was swapped for 5 Confederates in a prisoner swap.
Okay.
And then went back to battle.
Nice. Went from dragoon to hero.
I should mention he was from Philadelphia.
That's fair.
So
I also, that is something we've definitely lost that as a species, like human culture somehow. I don't know what or when, and like it's not that I love the idea of warfare or anything, but you know, even people who used to be pressed into going to war, right?
Yeah.
Like once they decided that was their like moral obligation, their honor obligation to like do as good as they possibly could, and they went on to do war hero-y shit, like
crazy shit.
Yeah,
I think that's really
we don't do that anymore. Nobody does that.
I mean, it really started to change with like how ugly World War I was.
Yeah,
like the fact that we had to like develop rules for war because of the Canadians after that shit.
Right. We had a whole talk on that a few episodes back. Yeah.
But
fucking
that
Canadians.
was the start of it. And then like, there really isn't even a war you could make a moral case for since then after World War II.
No.
Like,
I mean,
not any war that we've been involved in the U.S.
At least not from the offensive side.
Right.
Like, from the defensive side, pretty much every war, right? Because
you're being
everyone
attacked.
has a right to defend themselves. Like, and even, like, I don't think Israel has a right to exist because no state does, but I do think that the state of Israel has a right to some measure of self-defense, obviously, right? Because
they have the right to prevent incursions at their borders.
Yeah. Like, and, you know, like, obviously, if people are lobbing missiles at them, they have a right to try to shoot them down. Like, because they got people.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You don't have the right to just expand your borders whenever you want.
Right.
And I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's the big one. You don't have a right to just expand your borders and take land from other people.
But yeah, this World War III bullshit
and you don't have the right
we're getting dragged into. By the way, I wore the appropriate shirt for the day, my Barbenheimer shirt. You like it?
Barbenheimer?
Barbenheimer.
It's nice. I wore my Red Anarchist Black Metal.
I see this
T-shirt.
Beautiful. I need to get more like just fitting T-shirts for the topical events that we may be discussing.
That's fair.
I need to do more.
That's fair.
More shirts.
I got to wear my. Oh, we had the events of this past Saturday happened with.
Yes.
The largest day of protests in U.S. history and the most embarrassing military parade in the history of military parades.
My God. Yeah. All right. So I did the math. So at the roughly on the low end, it was 9 to 10 million people at the protests on the low end, and upper estimates are like 13, 14 million. Okay, that's what. That's seeing
an outrageously
everywhere.
Big number. Like
here's what the 9 to 10 is. 1 out of every 34 people in the United States.
Yeah.
That's roughly 1 out of every 34 individuals in this country showed up to protest last Saturday. And
I was there.
And that week, I went to a concert. I went and saw Wu-Tang and Run the Jewels, right?
Yeah.
And at an arena, at a stadium. Do you know how many people were in that stadium at the time, in the arena?
I don't know how much Amelie holds. 15?
22,000.
22,000? Okay, I don't know its capacity.
Actually, roughly up to 25 with the floor seating.
I know.
So, and it was that close to capacity. It was almost sold out. Right?
I know Raymond James hit 100K at Metallica.
Yep. So, roughly 24,000 people were there. Mm-hmm. Half of that number of people showed up for the fucking parade.
Yep.
I was at a concert.
See, Wu-Tang is forever, and Wu-Tang is for the children, so
right.
It makes sense.
But I was at a concert with twice as many people as were at the president's dipshit parade.
I really want to know what the final
birthday military parade.
I haven't been able to. They haven't released any crowd estimate numbers for St. Pete or Tampa that I've seen. I've been looking.
Not that I've noticed.
Because I'd really like to know, because I was at Tyrone.
By the way, dumb place for it. I don't know why. What is it? Was it just about permitting? Like,
it was. I think it was about having as much road to be along as possible.
Okay, I mean that makes sense because it's a very visible, high traffic area.
Every single, the front, the east side, and the south, and the other side of the mall were just wall-to-wall people.
Okay.
The entire perimeter of the mall.
That's cool. And it's a very high traffic area, so give it that.
And then 18th or 66th Street from about 18th Avenue North all the way up to probably 24th Avenue North area was just wall-to-wall people on both sides of the street.
Fair. I mean,
the other side of Tyrone Boulevard was wall-to-wall people, like across past the Barnes & Noble.
I would have preferred to have seen like a large like march or like a disruption where you basically, have the crowd take over a park and the streets around it because it gets so overwhelmingly large. I would have liked to have seen it basically someplace high visibility and condensed. It seemed really weird that it was over there because everybody was telling me that they were on different corners.
I think another part of it had to do with the tens of thousands of parking spots at the mall.
It does have a lot of parking there. Yeah.
Because the streets were packed and the parking lot was still half empty.
Yeah, that mall, especially because it has been quieter, all the malls in America have been quieter than usual over the last decade,
right? That's been unusually quiet.
Yeah.
But it's not like the malls down in Manatee County quiet.
Right.
Which those are sad. And they were sad 15 years ago.
Right, but it's obviously they built the parking and they built all these malls. Actually, most malls in America were all built in the same kind of swath of time. Yeah. Like in like a 25-year period, right? And so.
They started the early 70s through they really were stopping. They weren't really building many more malls by the time the 90s rolled around.
Right.
They were expanding existing malls.
Yep.
But they weren't building new ones.
Exactly, and but. You get that peak of like the 2000s where the so you get in the 2000s you get that peak of like where they, especially during the holiday rush, we're getting 10,000 people at a mall in a day, right?
Yeah.
So they built 20,000 parking spaces, right, to expand the properties.
Yeah, like if you want to be like shocked by the amount of parking a place can have, look at like a Google Earth picture of a mall.
Yeah. Oh, massive.
It's this teeny tiny little dot of a building just surrounded by like 100 acres of parking lot.
And the building itself is technically kind of huge.
Yeah.
But not when you compare it to the amount of parking necessary for the building.
Yeah, it would have
for the amount of people that go in there. It's fucking insane.
I also don't know that if it hadn't been there, if as many people would have shown up.
Yeah.
Like it was just easy for people to get there. It did seem weird at first, though. Like, when we were going there, I was like, this seems weird. This is a weird place for it. There was a lot of passing traffic, though.
So I've seen a lot of copium on the right about that that day. Because
and I've seen some dumb copium on the left, too.
Yeah, but I want to focus on the right's copium here for a second, because
It's funny.
It is.
Pathetic.
It's this, like, they're screeching about him having a mandate and how he had this electoral landslide and all this garbage, and a couple things about that. But the biggest one is that, again, when 1 out of every 34 people in the country show up to protest you,
Yeah.
and you don't seem to understand that the concept isn't that even some of the people who were out there had voted for him or didn't know previously how bad he was going to be.
Right.
I ran into that. I saw articles with people who were Trump voters who were out to protest him this time around. And it was because they didn't realize, they didn't know what he was going to do, what he was going to say. They were like all about well, let's do immigration the legal way, and then their cousin, their neighbor who had an asylum application got snatched up. Because that's what started this whole thing in the first place. And out in L.A., you got ICE wearing masks, no identifying information.
Refusing to
identify themselves, not even flashing badges.
No.
Just snatching people up off the streets.
Refusing to, say whether they have warrants or not. And, here's the thing. If you're not particularly politically engaged, you're just someone, which is most of the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And you start hearing the things prior to the election that people said Trump was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I could totally understand if you weren't paying attention that it would be very difficult to believe you weren't being, fearmonger.
Right. I mean, because, again, our system...
It sounded insane. It was true.
Our system is held so long. But a lot of it is off of articles of faith. Some, Robbie, a lawyer friend of ours, he and I and a couple of other attorney friends of mine have spoken at length about the flaws in our system, our body politic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that the Constitution predominantly was written on a lot of the idea that it would always be that class of elites that had the same interest and a same code of ethics and honor would be in charge, right?
There was a lot of we shook on it.
Yeah. And
It'd be fine.
And when you think about it,
no one will violate these norms. That would be rude.
Right. In the 1790s, these were guys who still kind of sometimes believed in duels, right?
Yeah. He violated the norms. Your ass might get shot.
Right. And, and there's a whole polite society, blah, 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 blah thing. So they thought of guys of that class. When we built an electoral college, it was designed to be guys of that class, right? And they thought of themselves with this noblesse oblige bullshit, but it held things together for a long time. And we left holes in the Constitution because of it. We left holes in our body politic because of it. And the expansion of the powers of the executive branch in ruling after ruling after ruling in the courts has left us vulnerable.
And that's how we end up where we are today.
Yeah. But it sounds like fear-mongering if you say, a president could kind of turn into a dictator if they did this and they did that and they did this and they did that.
We've got 240 some odd years of it can't happen here to contend with. Because,
But, and again, we're just lucky that we avoided it, because there are times in our history where we came close and we didn't realize it.
Early on.
Yeah.
There were... You only got you can be in single digits in the presidents, and some of them were wildly overstepping their bounds.
Yep. And in some ways that helped us create the administrative state that we have today, right? Fucking Jefferson, the Louisiana Purchase was a massive overstep of his bounds until he got Congress to ratify it afterwards. Right? But he didn't have the authority to do what he was doing when he was doing it, right? And they just gave it to him afterwards, oh, sure, I guess. There are a few other things like that, and fucking Adams.
Adams was bad about it.
Yeah, Adams was real bad.
He did not like people who did not agree with him.
Nope. And he didn't like people making fun of him.
Yeah. He was a total dick about that.
He was a total dick about that.
You should look that up sometime.
Yeah. And fascinatingly, there were some other ways that he was a pretty decent president. But some things, when it came to the executive authority and the power of the state, and he, absolute asshole. But yeah, and then we get, Jackson, who he was, and again, huge piece of shit.
He might be our most genocidal president.
Definitely.
At least in terms of, like, action. Like, there might have been more genocidal presidents in their hearts. But in terms of, like, doing genocidal things...
Yeah, the closest as far as action would be Truman.
Yeah.
Maybe. Technically, actually, you could go with the Louisiana Purchase because that was really while the Europeans had carved that up, like the French and the Spanish didn't really have all that much in all of those spaces.
Yeah.
Like, my hometown was colonized by the French before the U.S. was even a fucking thing. But
it was the French selling us land that they
only had a few forts.
They said they owned it.
Yeah, they said they owned it.
We took their word on that one.
Right. They had a couple of forts. They had a couple of colonies and little towns. They had some spots in like fucking Wisconsin and Michigan and shit, but they didn't really have, all that much of it until then. Like it was, but yeah, and that expansion allowed them to basically move into Indian country, like Native Americans, and just take their land, like. Because that's what we wanted from the get-go. It was actually one of the main drivers of the revolution, which we forget. It was all about Ohio.
Which is weird to think about looking at Ohio now.
Right.
Like, man.
How much wanting Ohio.
Ohio was a regrettable move.
Yeah. And you can read it in the Declaration of Independence. It's kind of hidden in there, but it's the... when they talk about how intolerable it is that the Crown has blocked immigration to the colonies, right? That move was because, you think about it. The colonies were set already. They existed for over a century, right? So all the land is pretty much taken up or taken over or owned or controlled by somebody. Where are new immigrants going to go? Well, the cities or westward, right? And the colonists wanted to expand westward into the territories of native nations that the British had like treaties with, that they were like, no, you can't do that.
You're gonna cause a war there, buddy.
And then that war, the French and Indian War, happened, and the Brits were real pissed that they were dragged into that shit because they didn't want to do it.
Right, how bad of an idea does a war have to be when the Brits are pissed about being drawn into it?
Right? Like, they don't even regret being dragged into fucking Iraq.
No, they don't regret much of anything, as far as I can tell, but they regret that.
Yeah, that one they were like, no.
Please don't.
We don't want to do this again.
Not?
And, but yeah, so we really wanted to, expand into fucking Native American territories in Ohio so goddamn badly. Well, not we, but the colonists, right? And that's one of the reasons. It's amazing. And now here we are. A nation built on genocide and slavery.
Whee!
Speaking of which, it's Juneteenth.
It is Juneteenth
Happy
today.
Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
I don't. Is it appropriate to say Happy Juneteenth? I don't know the etiquette of this one.
I mean, it was a happy. It was a happy event,
right?
I mean, it was the official final nationwide confirmation of the Emancipation Proclamation to everyone who needed to hear it.
Yeah, and this is the date that the Union forced the Texans to free their slaves. Yeah, which was the far end of the Confederacy. Yeah, right. Like, so that's good. That's a happy thing.
That was a good thing. I don't care what the motivations for the Emancipation Proclamation were. It was a good thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you can be like, well, he didn't really care. Like, that's true. Mostly, but like, sometimes you just have to be like, well, what was the outcome? You have to be a little utilitarian about it.
So,
and emancipating the slaves was a good thing.
So, as we talked a bit about,
not following through on Reconstruction was a little mistake we made.
Oh yeah, but, huge mistake.
Every one of those people that Johnson pardoned should have been hanged.
Every
single every single scrap of slave owner wealth should have been confiscated and apportioned to all newly freed slaves. That's what reparations should have been day one. Just take all of their wealth, liquidate it, and then divvy it among everybody who was enslaved.
That would have fixed...
And ban everyone that you don't hang for being a slave owner,
right?
In the Confederacy or a trader, everyone you don't hang is like barred from politics for life.
I mean, we basically came close. I mean, that's the fucking... And then the 14th Amendment has...
This country looks so incalculably different if those things had happened. And it was doable at the time. Like, it was something we could have done. It would have been unpleasant for them.
Yeah.
But it would have prevented a lot of problems that we had since then.
The assassination of Lincoln was one of history's greatest mistakes in the U.S. Like, one of the biggest tragedies. And not because Lincoln was a great man. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Lincoln. I think he was historically one of the most interesting and better presidents. He had his flaws. He had his weak points. He had areas where he expanded the executive beyond where I would have wanted him to. Set all that aside.
Oh yeah.
But he had more moral clarity than most. He had backbone, and once he was forced into the war, because he wanted to preserve the Union. He had no desire to have the war. So yes, he was going to compromise, and that's wrong because he was going to compromise and allow slavery as long as he had to.
And the funny thing is, like,
but once dragged into it, he had the clarity to move on it.
And then it was this interesting thing where secession was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. All of the things that they were afraid Lincoln was going to do, he necessarily had to do because they seceded.
Yep. Yeah.
And he very well may not have if they hadn't.
No, I think he would have tried to chip away at the institution of slavery. I think he would have gotten rid of, like, the Fugitive Slave Act. I think that, you know what I mean? There would have been...
Yeah, and I think as industrialization took more and more of a hold, as the 19th century rolled on, like, slavery would have just naturally become more untenable.
Yeah.
And it would have become really obvious that, like, why are we doing this? It would have taken about 20, 30
years longer.
But it would have been like, it would have been an extra generation.
Yeah.
But it would have been like, eventually it would have been like, what are we doing?
Especially because the South would have, like, been in deep poverty.
Yeah.
The U.S. would have been in, like, bad financial straits to keep it. And that, like... So it's like, ooh, you got a handful of ultra wealthy guys who own people down in the South, but the overall population there is fucking broke.
Crippling impoverishment.
Right.
Yeah, that wouldn't have...
Yeah, because it was inefficient.
You would have seen a lot of non-slave holding Southerners rebelling against the idea of slavery as an institution.
And
it just would have taken a while. And there's no way of knowing if that would have been better or worse.
No, but what we can know is that Lincoln would have followed that track if he was allowed to.
Right.
But unfortunately, the slave owners forced his hand, and
because they were stupid.
Yeah, and in response, he actively worked to end slavery, both from an executive stance and in the Constitution, and through, like, an actual plan to reconstruct the South that, if he hadn't been assassinated, would have been followed through. Like, I think he still would have, like, he would not have gone as hard as I would want.
No.
Right? But...
No, he wouldn't have John Brown 12,000 motherfuckers.
Yeah.
but I would.
But yeah, he would not have allowed Confederate generals or senior leadership or their political leaders, because he would have upheld the 14th Amendment.
Right.
Right? He would not have allowed any of them to hold office or have political power. He wouldn't have allowed slavers to have the wealth that they did. He would have kept troops in the South for a few years longer. Like, long enough that generation of black elected officials that went to Congress
And then they would have been able to like rebuild the South's industrial base as the Industrial Revolution chugged along. Like
instead of allowing it to use the 13th Amendment as a pseudo replacement for slavery.
It's funny. You hear all these neo-Confederates talking about the South will rise again and War of Northern Aggression and all that shit. If Reconstruction had gone the way it should have, the South would probably be one of the richest places in the country instead of one of the poorest.
Yeah, at least
the standard of living in the South today would be substantially higher than it is. Like across the South, like the deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, the like backwoods parts of Georgia.
Yes, because they
the
would have had a stronger industrial base, relied less on agriculture and low technical, I hate to use the word, but low-skill manufacturing, right? You wouldn't
have just seen everything go from like slave plantations to sharecropping.
Yeah.
Which was basically the same thing.
And press gangs of convicted felons doing the hard manual labor because, which is basically the same thing. And by utilizing those tactics instead, their economy was held back by another 10, 20 years.
And you could even just look at like some of the innovations they made in the wake of losing slavery that they could have made earlier, like simple things like the cotton gin. Like, who needs it? We got slaves.
Right.
That's the problem. That's one of the problems people don't think about with slavery is that it holds the entire culture back because you can just be like, why innovate? We have slaves.
Yeah. And
we can just force people to do this even if it sucks because it's not us.
And the barrier of entry into the market is higher because you have, in order to bring an innovation that is going to make labor cheaper, right? There's a price point to it, right? And paid labor is more expensive than slavery. I mean, yes and no, right? Like,
and what's funny is you can take that slavery stifling innovation idea all the way back to like the ancient Greeks and Romans who had like rudimentary steam engines that were toys and novelties and that they didn't do anything with because why would we do anything with this? We have slaves.
Once we conquer a town or a city, we use all of the men to do stuff for us.
You know, it was an oddity. It was a children's plaything, and it was 2,000 years before we invented it otherwise. Like, think about the course of human history.
Yeah.
If, like, 2,500 years ago, when they started fiddling around with these ideas, they'd actually, like, done something with them.
So, the news. The world news. Trump, of course, I like this Reuters headline. Trump, self-proclaimed peacemaker, embraced Israel's campaign against Iran. Like, he has serious FOMO on that one. Like, and it's funny because there's always a tweet. You look at him during the last two administrations that were Democrats, Biden and Obama, and he was constantly critical of how Joe Biden was allowing war and leading to war, and that if Obama had to bomb Iran or if Israel bombed Iran, it was because Obama failed to be a negotiator, right? And now
it's interesting to see how like this is doing serious damage to MAGA internally.
Yeah, because they're torn.
You've got people who are like, there are certain people who like you realize that they do have like one genuine principle that they stand on, and it was the like not getting involved in any more wars. Like when you see even someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene losing her shit.
Now here's the thing, I'm gonna say it. Once Trump settles on a policy and starts barreling through with it, and once he gets us involved, I think like 3 months, 6 months down the line, that like 90% of these fucks will fall back in line.
They usually do.
Right. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not they're opposed to it. Like, things like this can change. But as of right now, yes, there's huge divisions in the party. Like, the polling on it is not good for Trump.
Yeah, I'm seeing people who are like aggressively MAGA crashing out on TikTok about it.
Yeah, I mean,
like losing their shit about it. It's kind of beautiful to watch. Yeah, you wouldn't end up with things like that amazing interview Tucker Carlson did with Ted Cruz.
Yeah. First off, fuck you, Tucker Carlson, forever.
I will always hate Tucker Carlson till the day I die.
But
I do
this
hate
one,
Ted Cruz more.
I do.
And watching him shamed and humiliated by someone that wormy and slimy and disgusting.
Yes,
just makes because if someone like super principled and morally upright were shaming Ted Cruz, that's not important. That's not impressive. We could all do that.
Right, but no,
this was
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson
Just obliterating Ted Cruz. Like, you don't know anything about this country and you want to change its government.
In really embarrassing ways. Like when he's like, well, when Cruz was going on about, like, the Bible says we have to, like, whoever blesses Israel shall be blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker was just like, oh, yeah, what part of the Bible is that in? And Ted Cruz couldn't answer it. And Tucker was like, yeah, it's Genesis. I know that part. How many people live in Iran? I don't know that. I don't know population tables. He's like, it's 92 million.
Right? Like, somebody did their homework. The one thing, he's a smarmy, lying, dishonest fuck.
Right.
But he's actually not an idiot. Right?
No.
Like, Tucker Carlson, he has been one of those guys that he has remembered facts and figures since he was doing the Cato shit fucking 25 years ago, right?
Yeah, and he was the same type of, doing the same sort of shit all the way going back to
Crossfire. Yeah.
Crossfire.
Yeah. And he was better then. He wasn't so much of a right-wing schmuck.
It's I can't believe I'm about to say this. He was less of a piece of shit when he had the bow tie.
Of all the things, you're not wrong.
I can't imagine another human being I could possibly say was made better by a bow tie.
Right.
But Tucker was one of them. As soon as he switched to traditional ties, that was it. He just kept getting worse and worse.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I never would have guessed. I fucking hated that bow tie back in the day.
I think maybe it's possible that when he got embarrassed by Jon Stewart, he just went even crazier and harder. That's my thought on that.
I think at that point it might have been where he realized he shouldn't wear the mask anymore at all. Like, because he would try to do that. He was always like a right-wing ghoul, but he would try to do that, like, faux reasonable thing. Like, I'm not a total lunatic.
Right.
I'm not a grifter. All that sort of stuff.
I want to see if I can...
What are we doing?
I'm trying to get my bartender's attention by holding up a...
Oh, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's Gabby, so she's going to ignore me, even if she notices.
Fair. I probably would, too.
But we should get more Kava.
Huh?
We've never done an on-air bula either.
We never have.
Yeah.
We never have. I still have Kava.
You still have Kava?
I still have Kava because I'm sipping on it slowly.
Why are you sipping on it slowly?
Because I didn't feel like getting up to get more Kava.
Okay, well, I'm going to get up and get more Kava.
All right. Should we take a little break?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, we're going to take a little break, and we will be back. All right, it's recording again.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
For a break that you didn't have to watch because
we have
paused.
Kava, the dog was taken outside.
The dog has gone to pee. Reasons. We have Kava. So we're going to do what's called a bula, which is just a cheers, really.
We've never explained this.
Yeah,
we don't really talk about the bar ever.
Yeah, we're in the Kava bars. I mean, we mention it a lot, but we don't actually talk about it. So we're in the Kava bar world. So alcohol alternatives, for the most part, is the best way to think about it.
You're right. We've got Kava and Kratom primarily.
THC and CBD products.
They're more recent additions to the fold, but in the last 3 years.
So basically, we offer milder drugs to people who want to enjoy a social thing without
getting shit-faced.
Yeah, or without the risks of overdose, etc. Right? Because kratom is an opioid analog, Kava is a alcohol alternative, for people who don't want to get shit-faced either constantly or just ever again.
Some people need to go cold turkey forever, and we respect that here.
Yep, and other people just. It's an alternative to when they, go out,
I mean, the fact of the matter is I couldn't do this 10 hours a day if it were alcohol.
Yeah.
I would die.
I don't know. I haven't in a long time, but I used to.
You probably nearly died more than once.
Probably. A lot, actually.
I mean, you've told me specific stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a beyond lethal blood alcohol level once when I got my stomach pumped, but I was 16. And it was way beyond lethal.
Youth. Anyway,
Youth.
so we're gonna do a bula.
Shells up. Bula.
Bula. Tastes like dirt.
It does, but you get used to it.
We drink it for the effects, not the flavor, and you do
Right.
get used to it.
Yeah.
And we have smoother than average kava here.
We do.
I would say.
It's not as acrid and bitter as a lot of other places.
It's not as grassy either.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very vegetal.
Right. It's got that like weird, like almost vomit taste to it as soon as you
Yeah, like it's almost like a lactic acid taste.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so
Gets the job done.
it does. It relaxes you.
Silences the voices in the brain.
Sometimes I have so many voices though.
It quiets them if
Quiets
not
them.
silence.
Yeah, I never have silence from the voices in the brain.
They're not as loud all the time.
That is the case. So the news. Oh, the news. We got so much going on in the world today. So we're moving the Nimitz out into the middle of the conflict.
Cool.
I
saw some speculation, and this is like wild conspiratorial speculation that like they're moving the Nimitz out because it's old and they could false flag it without losing too much.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. That where that's wildly conspiratorial is I don't think that they can lose it.
No.
Carriers, even an old one like the Nimitz that's about to be decommissioned after this.
Yeah, you don't want to. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to lose.
But the defensive, like, so.
You're not going to tonk in that.
Yeah. Carriers are all defensive. So a friend of mine who had been in the Navy pointed this out, that carriers are all defensive, meaning that, like, the offense on them are the planes that they carry and the rest of the group that follows them, right? But the boat itself, the Nimitz, is basically a fortress on the water, right? Yeah. Even an old one like the Nimitz, it would take more than a couple of missiles to actually sink it.
They're beefy.
They're beefy.
They're beefy.
And for a missile to hit it, it would be tough because even with older equipment, it's got more upgrade. It still had upgraded guidance systems, and it's made for anti-missile defense, right?
Yeah.
So, but if it does get hit, that's the thing. It's in the middle of a hot missile war.
It doesn't have to go down.
Yeah. This is.
It doesn't even have to really take damage.
No.
It just needs to be fired upon.
Right.
And it could cause an incident.
Right.
An escalation.
That could cause us to respond, and then we would be in it because they would fire back, and ... I have been impressed with, now again, this isn't a standing for the Iranian regime. Fuck the regime, it sucks.
Right.
But I've been impressed by how restrained they have been.
You know, I'm going to be honest, like, I think because they've gotten so used to just using groups like Hezbollah as a proxy, that they've been like, as a country themselves and doing direct action themselves, they've been like shockingly restrained over the last 20 years.
Yeah. They don't. They send response missiles when they have to because.
And they send them as a proof of concept.
Yep. And they don't even send everything they've got because I mean they got hypersonics off of Russia a while back.
I feel like they're still just like. I don't think they want to relive what they went through with Iraq again already.
No, that was a long, brutal, protracted war.
That was very, very, very unfortunate. And people forget that it happened.
Yeah.
Like, we don't talk about the fact that they were at war with one another for years.
Yeah.
And it was brutal.
It was a long, brutal war.
And I don't think there's a lot of desire internally, even from your, like, religious, fanatic, supreme leader types, to do that again.
No, they don't.
Because I think they also know that, like, a protracted thing like that weakens them internally.
Yes, and remember that war involved a lot of actual WMDs. Chemical weapons were used by both sides, particularly the Iraqis, but some by the Iranians.
Our boy Saddam really liked.
Yeah.
Really liked him some chemical.
Yeah,
chemical weapons.
And Israel, in its infinite stupidity, is, willing. They have nukes and they itch to use them because they have a
Yeah,
they have a
don't-
superiority complex.
Yeah, and they very much want the day they finally admit they have them to be them launching one.
Right. That's
It's like, by the way, yes, we have had these for 30 years. Fuck you.
right. Like they want to. The day that they admit to having them is the day that some place turns into a big, bright, shiny spot because they're assholes. And
You know, here's the thing. Here's another reason going in, like fighting Iran is a bad idea, and why they can be more restrained. They are surrounded by mountains.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the few natural borders in the region.
yeah, a land invasion is near impossible.
It's
Iraq
essentially
was the closest one that could do it because again, they shared a border, and that's where a lot of passes between the two existed.
That's why you're just going to see a lot of lobbing missiles back and forth across the mountains.
Yep. But this is going to be a mess. Iran is not. They're not a pushover country.
No,
like,
Iran likes to saber rattle, and they like to talk a lot of shit, but they're not suicidal.
no.
They're not interested in getting wiped off the face of the earth. They're not interested in having to wipe anyone else off the face of the earth, even if they talk about it a lot.
Right, and they wouldn't be as easy to wipe out as a lot of jingoistic Americans and Israelis think.
No. I mean, there's a reason it's one of the most like long-lasting cultures in the region.
Yeah.
Like they've been the Persians for a long ass time,
Right, and think about
and
all
it is a
of the-
continuation of that. Like it's you can see the progression over time.
And there's so many pitfalls to the U.S. getting involved in this or to this thing escalating. Their military, like I said, is not going to be a pushover one. This is not. They're bigger and stronger than Iraq's was, right?
And that was a quagmire.
Yeah, and that was a quagmire. We took out the Iraqi military very quickly.
I mean, look at what we went through in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
It's got like a third the number of people,
yeah, like
and it's like was substantially more impoverished and less technically capable than Iran would be, and it ate 20 years of our lives
yeah.
for no gain at
And-
all. We got nothing out of that except 20 years of spending money failing.
Yeah, and so the Iranian military is more capable than the Iraqi one was. Population is 92 million. There's a lot to deal with there. Economically, it would be very bad too. While U.S. sanctions have hurt their economy and keeping them a pariah has not been great, they're still a major oil producer.
And it wouldn't be terribly hard for them to prevent anyone from shipping out oil.
Yeah, no, that
wouldn't be hard. Like, they could just cut off our supply entirely, and not just because they weren't pumping
Right.
and selling. Like, they could. That would be probably the biggest impact anyone in this country would feel.
yeah. There's so many economic impacts.
You'd be seeing $6-7 a gallon gas real fucking fast.
Yeah, but it looks like our administration is looking for a war to distract from its bad domestic policy and a
I'm
bad
sure-
case of FOMO.
I'm sure part of it is he's probably thinking about how, in the immediate wake of 9/11, W's approval rating was like 91%. And
Yeah.
in the immediate wake of the Desert Storm, Papa Bush's approval rating was like 85%.
Yeah, and of
And I
course,
think he thinks that if he
support
goes
for
to
Iraq was huge.
Yeah, and I think he thinks that he can have those kind of numbers and get the praise that he thinks he deserves, that his ego demands, if he takes us into this war.
Yeah, but it's
And this is one of those instances where it's the exact opposite of what he thinks would happen.
and to be honest,
I don't think.
once things start, I think that he would see a spike in approval. Like, there would be a dip, then a spike. I don't think he would see the numbers that he wants.
No.
But I think that what he would do is he would be falsely comforted by the fact that every time we get involved in something, somehow the population, a big chunk of us, get behind it, right? And I think that would happen again. I don't think we're going to see like 70% approval.
No, God,
I
no.
think that he might get above 50, 55 for a minute, right?
And I don't think you would see what you saw in the aftermath of 9/11, where you had a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds who were like fucking gung ho about enlisting.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't.
To get those guys, like you wouldn't.
You're not looking at that at all.
No.
And it would be a temporary, like, ooh, look, his approval is up for a little bit because, Americans band together once we're in a war.
Regardless of politics right now, the sentiment I see most among young people is, I'm not dying for Israel.
Yeah. And then once that cooled off, that immediate jingoistic, rah-rah America
Right.
mode happened. Once that cooled off, that fervor.
As soon as we started taking casualties.
Yeah. As soon as shit gets, or
You'd see that drop off
or
real
it just
fast.
drags on and starts costing money. Because even if it's only an air campaign for us,
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of fucking money.
It's easy to forget how expensive every single solitary missile we have is when we start shooting across the sea to blow up.
And they start shooting down $40 million drones.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is better than shooting down a $35 billion fighter jet,
Right.
but still, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean,
None of this shit we do is cheap.
you lose 100 of those, you're at,
And you also
a
run
lot of
problems
fucking
like,
money.
You run into the optics of there always being infinite money for war,
Right.
when we're always told we can't afford to do anything domestically.
Speaking of LA, we haven't really touched on the other, the No Kings protest we talked about, but
Right.
we didn't really talk so much about what's happening in LA at all, because that has been missed.
It's been and it's been wild, and it has unfortunately made Gavin Newsom look not terrible.
Yeah.
Which I am not a fan of at all. I don't like this.
I don't like him, but here's the thing: he's obviously trying to run for president already. This is his audition, and so if he's going to do it, I don't like the guy, right?
No.
But if he's going to audition, he's got to, this is his shot. This is his chance.
My only hope is that if he is the nominee, if he can keep up this energy,
Right.
which is a long time to keep up this kind of energy and goodwill.
Nobody hates the homeless
And
and Republicans more than Gavin Newsom.
I've seen so many good TikToks explaining Gavin Newsom, where it's like he's the least evil bully in a 80s ski comedy.
Yes.
It was one of my favorites.
But
There's some good ones.
I saw the one that my favorite was that nobody hates Gavin Newsom, or nobody hates homeless people and Republicans like Gavin Newsom, and he's all out of homeless people.
Yeah. Gavin Newsom looks exactly like he should be named Gavin Newsom.
Yes.
Oh shit, no, that's true.
But my God, he's looking not terrible. But what's happening in LA? Let's put it in context. It is not a riot. A handful of protesters on any given protest.
Within a 1 mile radius of the center of downtown LA, there have been some protests.
Yeah, when you zoom out, if you put a square around the area that it's happened, right, and you zoom out on Google Maps, you can't see it.
Can't see it anymore.
It's because LA is fucking huge, and downtown LA is fairly dense, but not the real heart of LA. If you've been to LA, downtown is one of those it's cold, it's sterile, it's all business and government stuff, and
no one goes there for fun.
Right. There's not a lot. There are things to do down there, but nobody goes there for fun.
It's not the cool part of LA.
Right.
There are multiple cool parts of LA, and downtown is none of them.
Right. And so people only go there if they have to for work, business, government shit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. So people, it's just a focus. It's just a focus protest there, and a percentage of every protest gets out of hand.
Right.
Every time.
And
the
in
police
LA,
were hyper aggressive, particularly
in LA,
the sheriff's department.
When a protest gets out of hand, 99 times out of 100, it's because the cops started it.
Right. And
the LAPD loves them a riot that they started.
And I caught a couple of reporters who had covered wars and protests and large protest movements around the world, who had said that they had never seen something more aggressive than the LA County Sheriff's Department, right? Who were aggressively over-policing the protests and utilizing violence and force in ways that Perón didn't. Right? In ways that Pinochet would have been shamed by in the early days of his regime.
And we get to see it all on video. We get to watch an LAPD officer, like, calmly and coldly aim his gun at a reporter and just shoot her with a rubber bullet.
Yep. We
On
got another
camera.
one where the New York Post cameraman got shot in the head by a rubber bullet. He was nowhere near any of the primary
but you
protesters.
can see the cop lining up his shot and firing, and the rubber bullet coming straight at the camera.
Yeah.
I've seen a picture of the guy in the aftermath. Like, the welt on his forehead.
Yeah.
Like, blood everywhere.
At relatively close, even
saw-
not at relatively close range, it can kill you
Yeah.
from like
'Cause that's the
from
thing.
like 100 meters.
You're not actually supposed to fire at a person.
Right. The rubber bullets,
They're bouncy.
they're bouncing. Well, all right. So rubber bullets, you aim for center mass, and you want to do it from a distance.
Yeah.
But they're for hitting the body, but you want to hit the torso, and you want
not
to
in the
do it from a
face.
distance. That's what they're for. Then the other thing that they use are those bean bags, and those
Yeah.
bounce. And that's a shotgun type device. It fires a bean bag at the speed of a shotgun out of it. It bounces, and then it hits the legs or the lower torso.
It's fucking trigonometry. It bounces back at the angle you hit the ground at.
Yeah, and so you want to use. So you never want to aim beanbags directly at people, which the cops have been.
Right.
Rubber bullets you want to do from a distance and aim for the body.
I saw a
and
picture.
limbs.
I know of at least one protester who lost a testicle because he was shot with a rubber bullet right in the groin.
I saw him being a baller about that.
Yeah.
Like,
There was another guy who lost an eye.
fuck.
Lost an eye
For protesting.
for protesting.
Like, again,
They
this
shot
is
him in the face.
your First Amendment right. The state has taken away a testicle and an eye from individuals who were exercising a fundamental right, the first right that we enshrined in our Constitution.
There was one young woman. She was just trying to get to her apartment building.
I saw that.
And she was just, you can watch the video of her like spending a minute or two, like just from a distance, like when having what seemed to be a very calm conversation with these cops.
Trying to figure out how to get to her apartment because they had blocked all access off.
And they decided the best thing to do was shoot her in the stomach.
Yeah, from
maybe 10 yards.
Yeah, it was not very far. It was like
It was close enough that they were having a verbal conversation.
halfway across the street, like length.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just capped her in the stomach for
30, 40 feet max.
for the crime of
Trying to go home.
trying to go home.
She wasn't a protester.
No, she was just
trying to get home.
yeah. The protesters were across the street watching.
Yeah. Filming.
And then they wound up giving her medical aid because the cops didn't do shit after they had injured a woman. Like,
My favorite story, though, has to be the L.A. County Sheriff's
and the LAPD.
and the LAPD kettling and firing upon each other.
Yes. This is a beautiful one. The two groups of protests that were marching were going to converge at an intersection, and the police departments did not want them to converge into a larger single group.
Right.
They were trying to contain and control it so they could keep them separated.
Even though when you really think about it, it's having two medium-sized groups is harder to control than one larger group.
Yeah, but one larger group can become completely uncontrollable in their minds, so they wanted to prevent that. And their way of doing that was to shoot at each other.
Shoot at each other. So you had the sheriffs
good.
firing off rubber bullets at the LAPD, and the LAPD tear gassing the sheriff's deputies, who some of whom either couldn't get their gas masks on fast enough or just didn't have gas masks at all.
Yeah. And there's audio of them crying over their fucking
and like
radios.
they're both calling back to dispatch, like begging for help, taking friendly fire from other fucking law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. It was a perfect encapsulation of everything.
Yep.
We've got ICE agents not identified. And these ICE agents, most of them are likely not actual federal employees.
Good chunk of them. We don't know. We
don't know, but there's a lot of evidence that they're using like private bounty hunters for a lot of this shit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of evidence based on like some of the tattoos that can be seen, even though people are covering their faces, that these are members of like the Proud Boys or
and Proud Boys.
3%ers
Yeah.
or Proud Boys, Patriot Front types.
Yeah.
Just fucking militia wingnuts being given like unchecked power to do whatever they want. If they want to wrestle a sitting If they want to wrestle the senior senator from the state of California to the ground for asking Kristi Noem a question, they can.
Yep.
They're not going to suffer any consequences.
Arresting a mayor for asking questions.
If they want to forcibly detain and rendition to a secondary site a mayoral candidate and comptroller of the state for asking, hey, do you have a warrant?
Yeah.
They can.
This is happening.
They don't have to identify themselves. You can't see their faces. Most of them are weirdly plain clothes with tactical gear over top of it. They look like
terrorists about to, or cartel guys trying to snatch you up. I shit you not.
They all look like that guy who has to take his fucking AR to Chipotle to order a goddamn burrito.
Yeah, they are not clearly identified. They're just showing up in quasi-plain clothes with some like tactical gear and vests and masks on, and they're snatching people out of vehicles.
And like a lot of this tactical gear is like shit that you just buy on Amazon. Like this isn't like officially.
No,
like,
it's,
you know.
But so the protests in LA. A Waymo got burnt. A big fucking deal.
It's just
some people loot. Some people break laws and break windows during these things, obviously. And it usually happens after things turn to chaos.
And you know what?
Once the police turn things to chaos or don't de-escalate the situation.
We never worry about this when it happens because someone won the Super Bowl or a basketball championship or the World Series.
LA has sustained more damage after every single one of their teams has won a major game than they have during this entire round of protests.
I'll always remember the way that the news talked about that burn down downtown riot in wherever Pumpkin Fest was.
Right.
When the white youths, college students, decided to completely destroy an entire downtown because it was Pumpkin Fest.
Yeah.
And they were drunk and hyped about pumpkins.
Yeah.
And the way they were spoken of was with more kindness and consideration and grace and empathy than non-violent protesters saying, hey, please do not rendition people to an El Salvadoran death camp.
Well, that's the problem that we have in this country. I mean, that's a big problem that we have in this country. This framing that what the state does is okay, is justified, that you should have complied, that our immigration system is even fair, legitimate. It's...
Now, I personally believe we should have global open borders.
Yeah, we've talked about that. And...
I know.
We're firm believers, but our immigration system, even if you believe that open borders is not the right answer, because most of the protesters, most of the people...
They don't agree with me on that.
Yeah. The vast majority, it's basically, we are a 5% minority in this country, right?
And most people don't have a problem with the deportations at any scale as long as due process is involved.
Right.
That's all they're asking for is due process, which is not even the bare minimum.
Yeah, and that's just it, is one, they're going beyond the bare minimum. The government has acted so far out of its scope that it is causing people who would otherwise be totally fine with this to be upset, right? Because they are skipping due process. They're just snatching people up at Home Depots and at grocery stores and restaurants without warrants, without due process. They're shipping them out of the country without due process. To top it all off, they are snatching up U.S. citizens that were just in the wrong place and brown.
Yep.
And even worse than that, or as bad, I would say, are the sheer number of people that are getting snatched up through the legal immigration system, right? Just the other day, there was I think it was Danish, a Danish man who was snatched up at one of his hearings for citizenship.
Yeah.
His final hearing for citizenship.
Yeah, the fact that they are you've got the situation where people are going in for their immigration hearings, that, they're going through the process legally, and then DHS is dismissing the case and immediately arresting them because they're suddenly undocumented.
Yeah. This is a fun one. Just the other day, this one's horrific. As we talked a little bit about Afghanistan earlier, right?
I know where you're going with this.
An Afghan interpreter for the U.S. Army who also helped with logistics and tactical support. So he was actively involved, embedded with U.S. troops, right?
Right.
Not just interpreting, but helping with strategy, tactics, and logistics in country. That's serious risk, right?
Yeah.
And
his deportation is an instant death sentence.
yes. He
And
was,
like, not just being shot either, like he will be tortured to death.
so he went to a routine asylum hearing where the government attempted to dismiss his case. Okay? Which would have made him illegal. Right? The judge actually disagreed with the government, refused to dismiss his case, and set a final hearing for July.
Okay.
So he was given a court date. So his status as paroled was kept in place by the federal court, and they were going to give him asylum in a month. He was going to get a final status, and instead, as he was leaving, DHS had Homeland Security had ICE snatch him up, and we don't know if he's being deported or not. Thankfully, the guy's got a good lawyer, but in the interim, he could just be being snatched up. And they're withholding his name because if he is deported, he's dead.
Yeah. They'll just kill him.
Yeah. And so they're trying to protect him as much as possible. So the news media hasn't reported his name, thank God, because if we do deport him in the next few days and send him to Afghanistan, the longer it takes for the Taliban to know that he's there,
right,
the better.
Maybe he can get out otherwise.
Right. But
across a different border.
Because that's how we got here the fucking first time. He couldn't make it out. He couldn't get out during our withdrawal. And so he had to flee through other means, made it here, was given parole and while his asylum was pending, and now he's in this boat. It's horrific. And he's done infinitely more for the United States government and our country, quote unquote, than any of these ICE agents.
Right.
Than any of them. He put his life on the line for us.
As we come out the other side of this, day one, we need to abolish ICE as an agency.
Absolutely.
We didn't have it before, was it 2003? 2002?
Yeah.
Something like that? It's barely 20 years old. We don't need it. We didn't need it for the first 220 years of this country's existence.
No.
We don't need it now, and we don't need it going forward. There's no reason for this.
None
we don't
whatsoever.
need a militarized immigration force.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's immoral as fuck.
They're out of money.
Yeah,
they've blown through their entire budget for the year already.
The entire DHS budget. Not even just this is amazing. ICE and Border Patrol have used the entire Department of Homeland Security budget for the year up
through September 30th.
Yeah. And they're just burning through it. So cybersecurity, out of money. Fucking airport security, out of money.
There's nothing.
Our intelligence apparatuses in DHS, out of money. It's impressive.
It's genuinely amazing how obvious it is that this administration hates this country. Hates this country.
At least hates it as it is.
Yeah.
Hates the American dream that we were sold
And they have it doesn't even feel like they have a vision for what they want instead.
No.
Certain segments do. I know what the Christian nationalists want. Mm-hmm. And I know what the Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, Dark Enlightenment guys want. And I know that their wants are entirely mutually exclusive.
Yes and no. Here's the thing. There are some parts of it that work together, right? Because the Curtis Yarvin guys right?
Right.
They see the religious right as a tool, okay? They're going to give them the latitude to do what they want to do at home and in their small towns, right? Make it possible for them to, maintain their little cults, right? And not have to learn things in school that they don't want to learn, right? For the Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin assholes, well, the big cities get to be turned into
freedom zones
and get to be turned into corporate technocracies, right? Like, and the megacorps get to take over. Like, it's weirdly
everywhere is Night City all the time.
Yeah, but and the small towns get to be places where the religious weirdos get to be fucking religious weirdos.
So we're living, what the vision is a world where a United States where half the country is Cyberpunk 2077 and the other half is Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
Basically, yeah.
I would rather neither.
Now there's a little Handmaid's Tale thrown in there.
Well, there's always a little Handmaid's Tale thrown in there.
Speaking of which, yeah, go ahead and tell.
Adriana
Smith. You were going to tell about this.
Adriana Smith.
I wanted to cue you up for this one because it's your angry baby.
We've talked about Adriana Smith more than once on this show.
Yeah.
They have finally allowed her to pass fully and taken her off life support. They did it on her birthday.
Oh, that's nice of them.
They did it on her birthday
she
when
lived another
they
year.
Extracted the 1 pound, 13 ounce fetus from her corpse surgically and immediately put it into a NICU incubator where it may or may not survive.
Yeah.
And this was all done just because the state, in cahoots with the Emory University Medical Center, which is 49% owned by the Catholic Hospital system. So 51% of the hospital is owned by Emory University. The other 49% is owned by the Catholic Church. And they used this woman's body as a medical experiment to see if they could grow a human being inside of a dead person. And they performed a cesarean section.
Because they couldn't.
On her birthday. And when they reached the point where they thought the child might be viable.
So I read up on that a little bit. I want to say it's not because of the viability. It's because she was dying.
She was rotting. She was rotting. Yeah. It was late enough in the pregnancy that they could theoretically maybe not have it die instantly. And it didn't die instantly. It made it into a NICU incubator and he's still alive.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with this.
But here's the thing: even if, first of all, these micro preemies when they're born, they have lifelong health issues.
Yeah. So
no matter what.
So I was not a micro preemie, but I was severely premature, and I had lifelong health issues.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm the only member of my family as thinly framed as I am. Yeah. There's not a single person in my family
built like me,
on my mother's or father's side of the family, right? Doesn't exist. Tall and thin, yeah, but tall and thin with larger bone frame and
yeah.
Doesn't happen. The sinus issues that I had, I had severe migraines all throughout my childhood.
I had bad sinus issues. I wasn't born premature. But my best friend was born 3 months premature. He still has health issues. He's 47.
Yeah, and I was under 6 pounds at birth.
Here's one of the things about being a science experiment as a child. Even if this kid survives and leaves the NICU and gets to have some semblance of a life,
right?
Even if he has no health issues from this, which I feel is impossible.
Yeah, no,
he is going to stay a science experiment for the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's a weird stigma.
He is going to be monitored and checked on and used as an example.
What is his life going to be like? Think about it. His father wanted this not to happen, right? his family is traumatized by this entire thing.
They're not going to get any financial support from the state for this.
Right. And, oh yeah, by the way, that's right. They're still forced to pay for this.
They're on the hook for all of this, yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is insane. But so they're going to bankrupt this family, and then they're going to raise a child that's going to have severe health problems. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like, if it makes it...
You know what all this reminds me of? You remember in, like, every Stephen King novel through, like, the 90s, he had the shop as, like, this sort of looming specter in the background. They were the ones that, like, did the program that created the Firestarter Girl.
Okay, yeah.
And, like, they were like, when Johnny Smith became psychic in the Dead Zone, like, they were, like, monitoring him and all that shit. This is, like... And they were like a CIA black op operation.
Yeah.
That's what all of this reminds me of. This is the sort of shit they would do.
Yeah, yeah.
This is straight out of a Stephen. Not only is this The Handmaid's Tale, it's straight out of a Stephen King novel. Like when he was writing horror exclusively.
Yeah. That's. It's disgusting. The TikTok ban has been delayed by another 90 days.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be midnight today.
Yeah,
like it was supposed to have been gone as of 16 and a half hours ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this standoff between the United States and China, like,
it's so stupid.
It is so dumb.
It's so dumb.
And it's hilarious that this was all about data, right? And one, the Chinese government could have just bought data from any data broker they wanted to. And you look all over the App Store, all those fucking free games that people are downloading all over the place.
They're just data harvesting.
Just data harvesting, right?
If it's free, your data is the product.
Yeah, you're being fed ads and they're reading your data. That's it. But Facebook sells your data, Google sells data.
And I mean, and I can't. Here's the thing: there's nothing the Chinese government can do to me.
Right.
If they have my data. There's a lot the United States federal government can do to me.
Yep. Which is what I was going to get into. Next, Palantir. Collusion. Palantir has all of our data. A company that is named after the corrupting, all-seeing eye of Sauron.
And with all of the data that Musk stole via Doge, Palantir is in the really unique situation of having the ability to correlate all public and private data.
Yes.
About every individual in a way that even the government can't, because these government agencies aren't allowed to share most of this data between them.
Right. So
like they are siloed and kept separate from one another so that you can't correlate the data.
They were illegally
as a
given
privacy protection.
Massive reams of data from every government agency illegally.
Yeah.
Like
stolen data.
Blatantly unlegislated, unchecked, no oversight, illegally given data that the government can't use in the ways that they used it to a government contractor that is going to put that data together and then funnel that back to the government.
For purposes.
For purposes. It is criminal and a massive violation of every individual in this country's rights.
It is certainly the single greatest violation of personal privacy rights that has happened in my lifetime.
Yes. To date, nothing bigger has happened next to the creation of the Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security.
And even
this
that,
is bigger than that in a way.
Because even that did not give the government this level of looking into our daily lives.
Exactly. Because again, the key component is, and this is again my anger at our judicial system for constantly giving power to the administration through dumb, specious arguments, right?
Right.
And giving up their legitimacy as they go. They have ruled on a few occasions that, yeah, sure, the government can't do these things, but they can hire private contractors that do them.
Right.
They can get information from a company that puts two pieces of information together that they can't.
And
right?
now one company owned by a literal Bond villain
Yes.
is going to be the ones with all of the data.
All of it.
Every single piece of data about you.
And they also
that
own
exists.
surveillance systems and have been working on AI that tracks individuals through their lives. They have the scale.
AI-fueled facial recognition.
The scale of things that could be used for evil that Palantir are working on is Bond villain-esque. Insane.
It's one of those things where it's like, no matter how bad you think it is, it's actually worse.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine how bad it is. Like,
there's only so many ways, and I sound like an alarmist. I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but this isn't a conspiracy or to be alarming. This is to be real.
No, but it is.
Be real with this.
It is everything that I said could happen when we were first pushing the Patriot Act back in 2001, 2002.
We have, over time, and every security expert, every tech expert on the planet has talked about our lack of data security and how we, Americans, Westerners, etc., give up our right to privacy through our devices constantly, right? We utilize all these services, all these devices. We technically don't even own our phones, even though we think we do, because we have licensing agreements.
We
right?
don't own anything anymore.
And so, but all of that is collecting massive amounts of data. Now, all of that was limited in how the government could use it. But we keep chipping away at that. And now we've just put that together with the data owned by the government.
Yeah.
Data that it's prevented from being used in certain ways is now in the hands of a contractor that they brag about the ways that they can help governments assassinate people.
Right.
Like this
is like literally Hydra infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have helicarriers in the sky ready to murder us if we get out of line, as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we did, this is the system you would use and want in order to facilitate that.
Yep. So we're in trouble with this, and
the big difference is they're not doing it in secret.
No.
Like, that's the thing that blows me away. Like
they're lying about it and trying to hide it, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it well.
We've had like 50 or 60 years of popular media screaming at us about this.
Yep.
And when you're watching the movie or you're reading the comic book, or you're reading the novel, or you're watching the TV show, fucking everybody understands it's fucked.
Yep.
Everybody is on the same page. Everybody's like, yeah, no, that's fucked. And then as soon as it happens in the real world, it's like, well, I mean, they might have a good reason.
And security.
Security.
But I mean, like, it's not that bad. And, like, obviously, there's this bias towards believing that people won't do evil things out of rational self-interest or evil things out of greed or bloodlust or whatever. But they do.
Right.
Humans can do bad things. And humans with power.
And sometimes doing evil is in the rational self-interest of the person doing the evil thing.
Yeah, that's...
Might not be in anybody else's self-interest, but that doesn't matter if the evil person doing the evil thing is the one with all the power in the situation.
Power and positions of power tend to attract people who want it.
Right.
And
there's a reason why psychopathy is much more highly correlated with being like a CEO than like the general population.
Yeah. And so positions of power attract people who want positions of power. They generally have more moral flexibility, or in some cases might just genuinely be evil.
Right.
It's not.
So it really is the old adage of power corrupts.
Yeah.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why my father told me I should never trust the Pope.
Nice. And the thing about that is that it's not actually that power. I mean, power does corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But really, the key component is that positions of power attract people
who want to abuse that power.
Who want to abuse that power, even if they think they're doing it for good or noble reasons. Like,
at a certain level,
Castro and Che Guevara, like, did horrific things because they were morally capable of doing horrific things.
And it creates this interesting paradox where I would say that, like, wanting to have a position like being president is almost enough of a red flag that it should be disqualifying for being president.
I know. We had one close to morally good human being in that office, and he was not a great president.
No. And he still committed some light war crimes.
Right. And then,
here and there.
Didn't
like doing it.
I would argue that Obama, while he did many horrific things, like, at least had a sense of ethics and obligations, and like had a problem sleeping at night because of some of his decisions. But again, he was capable of making those decisions.
Right. And I also think that there's a lot, and we don't talk about this much, I think there's a lot of situations where
there's no good outcome.
Like, you are given like 5 options and they're all terrible. Mm-hmm. And you're just trying to find the least terrible option. It reminds me of when, during Trump's first term, we assassinated Soleimani.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the option that was like, well, this is obviously the worst option, but it's an option, so he's not going to pick it. And he's like, do that.
Yeah. Like, God.
That's
and we did not need to do that. Like.
No, and it didn't help us.
No, it didn't. Like, and again, Iran surprisingly constrained from it.
They've been surprised. Like we were talking about earlier, I think it's just they don't have that desire to be involved in another, like, land war in the region.
Yep.
Like a full-blown war. They don't want that. That's not good for them.
Now, in good news, another SpaceX rocket blew up.
On the launch, during like a test firing. It wasn't even a launch. It just exploded.
Yeah, the rockets are not firing at the... How would I put it? The rockets aren't blowing up at points where it's useful. And by that I mean...
And they're not blowing up at points where you would expect them to blow up.
Right. For a while
they're not
there...
at normal failure points.
Yeah, for a while there, it was fine that SpaceX was blowing up rockets because they were learning something new every time, and it was a new... Like, they'd gotten to a new milestone, then boom, blows up. Cool. We just learned X, Y, and Z. But now, just blowing up during a test fire...
I think we're coming to learn that Elon is really good at building stationary bombs. Yeah. All I know is he's very intent on someday he wants to be on, like, the first manned test flight.
Right.
I support this wholly, completely. Assuming he doesn't get himself deported between now and then, I fully support him being on the first manned test flight.
I'm sad.
Starliner.
The one thing I'm sad about their breakup is that they both seem to have learned to have cooled down after a few days, right? And are basically have shut up about it.
Well, they both started crashing out about other things.
Yeah, exactly. Other stuff. Musk sharing his fucking drug test results.
I want to know who pissed in that cup.
Yeah, one, we forget that Photoshop exists, so he could have just cheated it. 2, he could have just paid somebody to take this test for him. He could have wizinated. He's the richest man in the world. He could have just paid somebody to go in for him.
I have on several occasions forged documents I knew I was only sharing online.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they were now.
But he's rich enough to...
I have forged documents.
In the history of humanity, which non-drug addicts have ever shared their drug test results publicly online?
That's a good question. I can't think of any.
Right. Let's be real. Also, all the good drugs have short shelf half-lives in your body, right?
Yeah.
And so, the main one that he has been suggested he's addicted to or over-abuses is ketamine.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the half-life of ketamine is. It's not long.
At most, it's 7 to 15 days. It's usually like 1 to 3.
Yeah.
But if you're a heavy user and you have metabolic issues, 7 to 15 days.
Okay.
So all he had to do was be clean for 2 weeks.
And he's been unusually quiet for 2 weeks, too.
Exactly. And
since his crash out.
Yep. And ketamine doesn't have heavy withdrawal symptoms. It's addicting, but in the mentally way, not so much the physical way.
Yeah.
So, he could have just had somebody fucking keep him under lock and key for 2 weeks. And maybe he drew down his usage for a week before that, right? That's all he had to do.
A little bit of tapering.
Yeah, a little bit of tapering and then go cold turkey for
it's
4
not
days.
it's not like pot where trace amounts can show up in your system like 30 days later.
Yeah, no.
And fuck you over entirely.
But so, yeah, there was that. Oh, Minnesota. We didn't get into that. Jesus Christ.
Oh, God, yeah. Again, on Saturday,
Yeah.
this all happened. This all came out.
So that happened on Friday. And they warned not to.
Right. We found out about it Saturday.
Yeah, and his backup plan was going after the protests on Saturday.
He had a list of 45 other elected Democrats he wanted to take out.
Yeah. So a man shot the Speaker of the Minnesota legislature and a senator and their spouses.
And their dog.
And the dog. The first couple both died. The second couple are in critical condition, ICU. I haven't had an update.
I haven't seen an update in the last couple days.
But the last I heard that they were expected to make it through, but it was touch and go. He pretended to be a police officer. He was an evangelical, a huge Trump supporter, a massive pro-life movement guy.
And like a lifelong...
Yeah, lifelong conservative.
Out and loud, proud, been on the internet screaming about it for 20 years, evangelical.
And so the American right and MAGA movement pretending this guy was some left-wing activist, go fuck yourselves.
Like it's objectively not true. You got to own this one.
Yeah, he's you. He is the natural evolution of your movement and attitudes and all of this. Because again, the pro-life movement especially, if you genuinely believe that every abortion is a murder, right?
Why wouldn't you kill to stop it?
Yeah. What you are creating a situation where people's moral compass is driven towards violence in action. Because why wouldn't people utilize violence to put it to a stop?
Right.
Like, there's no way around that. And so, yeah, this guy guaranteed to be a fucking kill. Like, this is the natural evolution of what MAGA is leaning towards. This authoritarian bullshit.
And I know it's not their way, and they always equivocate and are timid about their response.
Right.
The Democrats need to be way more clear about who did this and why.
Absolutely.
Because they don't like to do that. They don't like to call these forces out directly.
No.
They always try to talk around it.
They took the wrong message from the basket of deplorables comment.
Yeah.
Like, look,
I mean,
Clinton said it in an inartful way.
She wasn't wrong, though.
But she wasn't wrong.
She was absolutely correct.
Yes.
If there's one thing that it might be the thing she was most correct about.
Right. And that's, hands down, she was dead on. This was this basket of, because, again, she wasn't talking about every Republican voter, even though at the time, most of you didn't like Trump or the MAGA movement.
Right.
Like, you guys decided to join, like, sunk cost yourselves into a cult. But
now a good chunk of you are genuine true believers.
Yeah.
Like you've convinced yourselves of the truth of it all.
But 10 years ago,
amazing.
10 years ago, it was a bunch of Nazis and white nationalists and the KKK and conspiracy theorists and flat earthers getting together because they loved this one crazy asshole. That's who he was. That's who he attracted.
Yeah.
And the Blacks for Trump guy was the leader of a cult that murdered people. Like, he had killed some folks. He got acquitted because of a procedural bullshit, but he had definitely killed like 2 people.
Yeah.
And he was behind Donald Trump at like 20 different appearances because he was the only black guy in the audience. Like, and so they
made sure to put him like center left, right behind him.
Yeah, but Mr. Yahweh bin Yahweh, like. Right? So this is the kind of bullshit.
I have a sneaking suspicion that wasn't his given name.
Really?
Just a weird sense I have that his parents didn't name him Yahweh bin Yahweh.
But yeah, so this asshole in Minnesota owned a security firm that had light bars and everything else, and like he was fucking cosplaying as a cop, and he pretended to be a cop by swapping out to a blue bar, right? And rolled up on people's doors, knocked on their door fucking 2-3 in the morning. They answered, shot him. And now, again, who among us wouldn't answer the door Like, especially if you're a normal person who is, like, not involved in anything criminal, you're a political person. So if the police are showing up at your door, it's
probably a good reason.
It's probably a good reason. It's a shock. Like, who among us wouldn't open the door at 3 o'clock in the morning when we see blue lights and a guy in a uniform?
Yeah. Well, God, the bad news. Somebody's hurt. A family member was in an accident.
Yeah. Or I may be in danger because, again, I'm a fucking elected official, and because, you know, in Minnesota it's the blue lights of the state troopers, I believe. So, you know, state troopers are showing up at your door, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously.
That's never a good sign.
Right. But yeah, we have this fucking cult that I know is going to do more of this, and this guy fits the exact profile of so many of these MAGA chuds. It's worrying.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I don't... And, you know, we're going to see more of it. I don't know... And we're going to see the federal government not responding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they're just... You're not going to see the DOJ do anything about this. You're not going to see, like, the FBI investigate this shit.
The administration has been dead-ass silent about this. Like, this day, they focused on everything but, and so did Fox News, as much as they
Trump
could.
has released one statement he obviously didn't write.
Yeah, and then, remember when he said that he wasn't going to call Waltz because he was, like, he insulted Tim Walz. Like, and said he wasn't going to call, like, Walz was a personal friend of one of the individuals that was shot. Like, fuck you, Trump. That's who I want to see in 2028. I like Tim Walz. I know Minnesota bias and all that jazz, and he was a teacher at my brother and sister's fucking high school. But
no, that's fair.
That, you know, but that's just it. Is I have some data points that suggest to me he's a genuine human being, right? And the only reason he even got tapped for that kind of power to be vice president was because, like, he checked off all those boxes of being a genuine human being, and Harris wanted that. Like,
and he, like, achieved things as governor.
Yeah.
Like, positive things for the state he achieved.
Yeah, Minnesota, there's a few policies in Minnesota that would have made great national policies around, like, universal school lunch and expanded health care for children, etc. Minnesota is doing a bunch of different things in those regards that would be great policies nationwide. Do we have any good news for Sam?
That's a... I can't think of any in the last 2 weeks. It's been a rough 2 weeks.
It's been
a rough 2 weeks.
I mean, they did arrest the guy in Minnesota alive. So he's going to get
We're going to learn a lot more about his motivations specifically, and it's going to be harder and harder for them to pretend he was a far-left Democrat, as if that's a thing.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to be able to pretend like they did. So that's really good news. Let's see.
Did you watch the video of the flagpoles being erected?
No. What happened?
So, Trump had 2 flagpoles installed at the White House. Mm-hmm. 88 feet tall.
Okay.
88.
88. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
88 feet tall.
That's funny.
And I think I might have sent you...
Were they 14-inch wide?
I'm pretty sure I sent you the video of some young woman reading a verbatim transcript of his comments about the installation of these...
You may have. I might have missed it.
These flagpoles.
Okay.
It's amazing. Like, he's just like, they're so tall. They're the best poles ever. Look at the way they taper and the way they've got the toppers on the end. You don't see that. These are they're the best flagpoles in the world, in the history of flagpoles. And he just drones on about, like, how I had these same flagpoles I had installed at Doral, and they're the best flagpoles ever. And it's very beautiful that we have the flagpole. He's just like hyper fixating and sundowning about flagpoles for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he throws in some weird comments about like Harvey Weinstein and about how like if Harvey Weinstein, the weight workers who installed these flagpoles, I don't know if they all voted for me, but I assume they're all voted for me. They're great people. Some Hollywood producer is going to see them standing behind me and make them famous, but it won't be Harvey Weinstein because he's got other problems, you know. And I want to say that we're raising these flagpoles, but I can't use the word that I really want to use because you would all come for me if I said the E word, the word that begins with E, about what we're doing with these flags. It was fucking unhinged.
What a fucking lunatic.
Yeah, he didn't want to say the word erect.
Wow. One tiny piece of good news, we covered it in large part, but that No Kings protest was the largest single-day demonstration in American history.
And it was nice. It was good. I was there. Like I said, I was there. And what I really appreciated was we had several thousand people out there.
Oh, is Kristi Noem dead yet?
So apparently she got sick the day after she went to a biological hazard site with RFK.
Yeah.
Like it was like a decommissioned bio site or some shit. And then the next day she's like, the wild speculation I've heard about what happened to her is a thing of beauty.
Yeah, but apparently it was an allergic reaction. Damn it, she's probably gonna live. Fuck. But hey, Kristi Noem was rushed to the hospital, so she's allergic to. She's allergic to something. Bad enough that it causes her to be rushed to a hospital.
Speaking of allergic reactions, that dude who had that billionaire who was playing polo and a bee flew in his mouth and stung him in his mouth and he fucking died.
That's good news.
He was playing it just flew in his mouth and
Nature is
stung
healing. Nature
him.
is healing.
He fucking died.
Oh, my God, that is fucking beautiful. All right.
Yeah.
That's good news.
That's
I like
good
that.
news.
Yeah, there's a bunch of bullshit about Trump is banning unpatriotic signage at national parks. And any negative messages, apparently. So I have a feeling that's going to be anything that has to do with like the history of things that might have happened at that park.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, they already took down the sign at Stonewall Inn.
Yeah, that was. Oof, we covered that one when it happened, but that's offensive.
Yeah, you'll just see a lot of that. A lot of whitewashing of history.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
It's pretty speculative so far, but have you been watching the reporting that has been happening from and around and attached to the discovery in that New York election case?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
So there was in New York, there were some areas that voted widely for blue down ballot that had 0 votes for Kamala Harris. And the discovery is showing that was it's statistically impossible.
Right, yeah. There's no way that, like, you voted for Kristen Gillibrand and you didn't vote for Kamala Harris.
And that 7,000 people didn't vote.
Yeah, because there was at least one district where there were 0 votes for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And there were not 0 votes for every Democrat running.
There is some evidence that some form of vote flipping algorithm might have been at play.
Right.
There's some evidence that the company that owned these machines is involved in an organization run by Leonard Leo, one of the founders of the Federalist Society.
Yeah.
And that...
Who Trump is now upset with.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
That Musk and the billionaire class might have bought most of the voting machine companies around the country that did electronic voting machines. And there's a hinky little... Right before the elections, a massive update was pushed out that had no explanation.
Now, here's the thing to remember, though. No matter
This
what we find
screams like
out,
they used 2020 to set up and muddy the waters and make the counter-accusation.
Look insane.
Yeah. So that they would look...
Which is on Brent.
Yeah. So that they would make any of this look insane when they did it the next time. That's what it looks like to me.
Here's the thing that people need to remember about this. Like, There's no such thing at this point as overturning an election.
Right.
But
I mean, there are technically ways it possibly could happen, but
they won't.
They won't. Right.
They won't.
We know that.
But it is important because, one, it's the only way you make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right.
And that's the most important thing. I think that the best, if you're going to have a voting system, the best way to do it is to have a verifiable paper backup system. I like the scan sheets.
Yeah.
I like the scan sheets. They give you instant, counting.
Right.
But you have a physical piece of paper you can go back to and verify later.
And
I have never been comfortable with just the touch button, touch screen.
No, I oppose that shit.
My last election in Maryland, we had touchscreen voting, and I did not like it at all.
And
that was 2004.
And even with the optical scan sheets like that, you can still rig an election electronically.
Yeah. But you have a physical
you have a physical
paper
backup
trail that you can compare. If it's if you do end up with these weird statistical anomalies, you can be like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You have a physical paper trail to go back to for hand recounting if necessary.
It doesn't necessarily make sense that Trump won by almost Reagan-like numbers, right? And won all the swing states.
It is unusual that he took every swing state.
Yeah. And it's unusual that Harris did so poorly in counties that were should have gone to her.
And I will say also this.
I'm not saying I'm not saying I have an answer to this.
Right.
I'm saying
we need to know.
We need to know.
But I will say this: none of this would have happened if the largest voting bloc in 2024 hadn't been non-voters.
Yeah.
Because 75 million people voted for Kamala Harris, and 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, and 90 million people who could have voted didn't show up at all.
Right.
And while I fully appreciate that there are some number of those people who were put in a position where they could not vote, where they were genuinely disenfranchised because they lived in rural areas and their polling locations were closed and they didn't have transportation and mail-in voting was suppressed.
Yep.
It was not all 90 million of them.
No.
And if only 10% of those people had fucking shown up and voted, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Yep.
And it felt like, leading up to the election, that there were segments of both the right and much more so on the left that were actively discouraging the idea that people should vote at all.
Yes.
And that was the most irresponsible thing that I saw in the entirety of the 2024 election. And these people, these third party and these anti-electoralist leftists who made this case, they always like to say, it's like, well, if you look at the number of people who voted for Jill Stein or other third-party candidates, it doesn't make up for anywhere close to the number of people, the number of votes that she lost by. But there's no way of knowing how many people that a TikTok leftist with 1.3 million followers discouraged from voting at all.
Right.
How many younger people were convinced that they shouldn't even bother to show up at the fucking polls and they shouldn't bother to do the thing in the slightest?
I'm not going to say that your discouragement was the factor. What I will say is that
you can't pretend it couldn't have been.
You can't pretend it couldn't have been. And with that much of an audience, you had a responsibility in the opposite direction. Yeah. You were responsible. Your responsibility to encourage people to perform a civic duty and to do less harm. I don't care about your purity test bullshit. I don't care whether or not you think voting for the lesser of two evils is still evil. Fuck off. Like, if you want to be in Texas or California and have that position, sure, whatever, right? Like, your state's going one way or the other either way. If you live in any state where it's close, every election,
if you had
you have a responsibility.
If you had even done what I remember happening in 2000, where people who were in safely blue states, like Maryland, where I lived at the time, and there was a big push to get Nader over 5% in the popular vote so they could get matching federal funds in the next election cycle. And there was a coordinated effort on the internet for
people to trade votes.
People to trade votes, and you're technically not supposed to do that.
But who cares?
Nobody can stop you. But there wasn't even any sort of discussion about it. It's like, hey, you live in a swing state. you want to vote for Jill Stein.
Even though communication is easier today.
I live in a deeply, deeply blue state that is definitely going to go for Kamala Harris. If you vote for Harris, I'll vote for Stein for you.
Yeah.
There was none of that. It was just, you shouldn't vote. Voting doesn't matter. Both candidates are exactly the same. And I still, to this day, see people say, if Kamala Harris were president, everything that's happening now would still be happening.
Bullshit.
Which is totally deranged.
Absolutely
and that
deranged.
is purely cope on your part because you know, or at least you know there's the possibility that you played a role in creating everything that everyone's going through right now.
I can almost guarantee you that things would have been in a very similar position to exactly how they were in 2024, 2023, 2022.
Yeah.
Right?
Far from perfect.
Far from perfect. Everything would have been identical to the Biden administration, to the Obama administration,
and
to the Bush administration. Like the basic status quo bullshit where we're arguing over this much change.
You wouldn't see...
but what we're seeing today, none of it.
You wouldn't see ICE raids in Home Depot. You wouldn't see ICE raids in restaurants. You wouldn't see ICE raids in hotels. You wouldn't see student visas being canceled because somebody used their First Amendment rights that they have, regardless of whether or not they're a citizen. Solely because they are in this country, they have that First Amendment right. Because it applies to all persons, not all citizens.
And now again, I hate that Obama and Biden were both massive deporters, right?
Right.
But let's...
They had a system for due process set up.
And actually, let's look at who they deported.
Yeah.
Let's be real, because they were doing the thing that these MAGA assholes pretend they want. That's just it. If they wanted the policy they said that they wanted, that they vocally expressed and screamed about, and told us that we were liars when we brought up race and shit, right? Yeah. Like, because no, they believed in legal immigration. Like, you look at the targeted enforcement. The Biden and Obama administrations, particularly the Biden administration, focused on criminal aliens, right? Yeah. People with criminal records, people who had gotten arrested for assault and battery, domestic abuse.
And one of the reasons his total deportation numbers were as high as they were is because they were counting you being turned away at the border as a deportation.
Yeah.
Like, so that drastically inflated his numbers because anybody who showed up and wasn't let in was counted as a deportation.
Yeah. But you look at who they targeted, right? And it was night and day from the first administration, because of Trump first administration. Again, he targeted fucking normal people for fucking no good reason, and it was better than it is now. This is even worse. But the Biden administration focused on immigrants with criminal records, right? People who had broken laws, people who had committed violent crimes, people who didn't have children and weren't raising families and didn't, right? Like, he was focusing on the type of quote-unquote illegal aliens, the right claims that they want to focus on.
Right.
And we were getting that. If you wanted that, if you wanted what Trump said his policies were going to be,
you should have voted for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, or Harris. That's who you should have voted for.
And all this time we've spent, like, opposing Trump and protesting Trump, we could have spent, like, agitating for actual positive change.
Right. Now,
in the U.S. and in Gaza.
Now, I get it, getting liberals to want to do things, because, yes, a big chunk of those assholes out there with us, or with you, on Saturday, wanted to go back to brunch.
Right.
Right? Like, probably the majority of them. Sure. Right? But those of you who really did care, maybe, I don't know, could have been agitating protests in the thousands at least, right, against the current policy. Because I've been involved in pro-immigration fights for a long time. Like, this is something that takes time, but it takes agitation. Right now, we're just focusing on triage. This is a tourniquet.
This is survival.
Yeah. You put us in survival mode when we should have been in repair mode.
Right.
So that's, I guess, the note I want to end that on.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like I have much else to say.
Yeah, me either.
Been ranting for 2 hours.
That's what we do.
You know, the camera never died.
You're right.
The camera never died.
Your apartment is, even when the AC is working, always a little on the warm side?
It's because that door wall is directly in front of the computer table.
Yeah.
I need to get, like, blackout curtains.
Yeah.
Blackout curtains.
You
We'll
don't
look
open
into
your
that.
curtains anyways, do you? Yeah.
They don't work.
Oh,
I think I did it. I think I broke the runner.
fair.
So they don't turn, they don't twist. Actually, I think one of the cats did it.
That would make sense.
I don't know
Cats
how they
destroy
got up
shit.
there, but like, it worked one day and it didn't work the next, and it was after I was living alone. I only had cats, but one of them was 23 pounds, so
Right.
he was a destructive boy.
Fair. All right, well, on the river now.
I'm Gonzo.
This has been the Grift.
See
Give us all your money.
See y'all next week, hopefully back in the real studio.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the meantime, remember, give us all your money.
Give us all your money.